This ain't just a channel, this is BBTV.
Welcome to What the Fork Wednesday, the stories that make you stop, blink twice, and ask yourself how this is real life. Logic has left the building. Let's begin.
Boss be rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dreams, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss be rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it.
Hey y'all, welcome back. Look, if you're new here, let me save you a little time and a whole lot of confusion right up front. This is What the Fork Wednesday, which means this is not the day for tidy answers, neat timelines, not even stories that behave themselves. This is where the math doesn't math every time. The rule book gets used as a coaster, and we all collectively stare at a story and go, now wait just a damn minute. So I'm easing my voice back in today still, and I'm being smart about how I use it because I do have a show tonight. We have the Ladies' Diary, and I encourage each and every one of you to be there because it is Miss Davina Mama Lion's turn to shine today, and I cannot wait. I'm so excited for us both in this show. This is our baby, and we are working it. So I'm being smart about how I use my voice because I don't want to ruin that up. But don't let that fool you because the energy in here is still turned up all the damn way. And I'm going to go with Z-Rock and say if it's too loud, you're too old. Now, I may pace myself. I do have a lot of videos today to take care of it because I'm serious. I want to save it for tonight because it's a panel of ladies. And what do we do when a panel gets together? We solve problems by talking it out, plain and simple. And you should be there for it. So I may pace myself, but the story sure won't, and neither will the questions we're about to ask. Wednesdays around here aren't about lessons. They're not about fixing anybody, and they sure as hell aren't about pretending the mess didn't happen, okay? Wednesdays, they're all about survival, about the people whose stories should have ended early, ended loudly, and I mean permanently, come on. And somehow they just didn't. Go figure. Careers that should have wrapped up, lives that should have gone sideways, legacies that by all logic should not exist. And yet, here they are, still breathing, still echoing. Well, most of them. Still rattling around in our heads, that's for sure, even now that he's gone. But it's like, it's really like a loose bolt in a glove box for me, seriously. And that's why this day exists, because some stories, they don't want to be explained. They want to be stared at. Today is built around one single letter. This letter is not asking for advice, closure, or motivational speech. You can hang it on the fridge, okay, but not here. This letter is asking a much more dangerous question, I believe, in my opinion, but true. How the fork does someone go through all that and still end up standing? Not polished, not perfect, just upright and somehow still holding the mic. This isn't a day for moralizing, okay, because Wednesdays don't care about moralizing. This is a day for honesty and curiosity and a little bit of raised eyebrow disbelief. And I'm going to be looking over my glasses. So the kind where you're not mad, you're not judging, okay? You're just genuinely impressed and confused at the same damn time. And I love those moments because those are the stories that refuse to behave, right? The ones that zig when they should zag, trip over their own feet, and somehow still cross the finish line like, what? I made it? All right. So today we're going to do what we always do on What the Fork Wednesday. We're going to read the letter. We're going to sit with the question, and then we're going to follow the story wherever it decides to run, even if it runs straight through common sense, because it happens. And then it knocks over a chair and keeps going. There's no clean takeaway promised here, okay? No tidy bow. No, and that's the lesson, folks. Sometimes the only honest reaction at the end of a story like this is to lean back, shake your head, laugh a little, and say, yeah, that right there, that's it. That's what the fork. So grab your coffee, your drink, whatever your snack, whatever gets you through a story that refuses to behave, because today's one of those days. Let's get to the letter real quick.
I'm not coming to you with a question so much as a full body shrug and a raised eyebrow, because I have been staring at this story for way too long and I still can't make it behave. There are artists whose lives make sense if you squint a little and tilt your head just right. Ozzy Osbourne is not one of those people. This man's career reads like somebody shook the Etch-a-Sketch, lost the instructions, and then just kept yelling, "Send it anyway." By all the rules we pretend exist, this story should have ended early, and then ended again, and probably ended a third time just to be safe. Careers have ended for way less. Lives have ended for way less. And yet somehow, decade after decade, the music kept showing up, the influence kept growing, and Ozzy himself kept wobbling back onto the stage like, y'all thought I was done? Fired from his own band. Chaos that would have benched anybody else permanently. Reinventions that had no business working, but worked anyway. Every time the door looked slammed shut, another one popped open like the universe was messing with us on purpose. I'm not here to excuse bad behavior or pretend the mess was cute. I'm just trying to understand how the math keeps refusing to math. How does a life that reckless turn into a legacy that won't quit? How does somebody fall down that many times and still stand back up holding a microphone? And at what point do we stop trying to clean it up, explain it away, or turn it into a lesson, and just admit the truth? This whole thing makes absolutely no sense. And somehow, that's what makes it incredible. If there has ever been a career in music that earns the title What the Fork, it's this one. Signed, still confused, and weirdly delighted about it.
Ozzy Osbourne existed in a space where outcomes didn't match behavior. Nothing about his early career suggested longevity. If anything, it suggested a short, explosive run followed by disappearance. The warning signs weren't subtle. They were constant. Coming out of industrial Birmingham, Ozzy wasn't polished, disciplined, or predictable. What he had was presence, a voice that carried unease, vulnerability, and menace all at once. When he fronted Black Sabbath, that presence became inseparable from a sound that changed music forever. But even at the height of that impact, instability was baked in. Substance abuse wasn't a phase. It was a condition. Reliability became questionable early, and consistency was never guaranteed. While the music grew heavier and more influential, the foundation underneath it remained fragile. The disconnect between creative output and personal personal control widened quickly, and everyone around him could see it. This is where the WTF begins. By any reasonable standard, the story should have stopped when Ozzy was fired from Black Sabbath, the very band that defined his voice and place in history. Losing your position in a genre-defining band usually marks the end of relevance, especially when addiction, reputation, and instability are already working against you. Most artists don't come back from that. Many never even get the chance to try. But Ozzy didn't disappear. Instead of fading out, the chaos followed him forward. What should have been a closing chapter turned into a reset that made no sense on paper. Without the structure of a band behind him, without the safety net of shared responsibility, Ozzy stepped into a solo career that should have collapsed under its own weight. And yet, it didn't. The early solo years weren't clean. They weren't stable. They weren't safe. They were volatile, unpredictable, and constantly on the edge of collapse. Health scares, erratic behavior, and public incidents stacked up faster than explanations could keep up. Every tour, every album cycle, every appearance felt like it might be the last. What makes this phase so baffling is that survival wasn't accompanied by reform. The behavior didn't suddenly improve. The risk didn't disappear. The same patterns continued, only now without the buffer of a band to absorb the impact. By all reasonable expectations, the odds were worse than before. And still, the music landed. The audience stayed. The influence expanded. The career moved forward in ways that defied logic. This wasn't a comeback story yet. It wasn't redemption. It was momentum without explanation. The kind of forward motion that forces people to stop trying to rationalize outcomes and start acknowledging that some careers exist outside the rules we expect them to follow. Segment 1 of Ozzy's story is uncomfortable because it removes the illusion of cause and effect. It challenges the idea that success is earned through discipline alone, or that consequences always arrive on schedule. Sometimes, they don't. Sometimes, the story keeps going long after it should have ended. And that's what makes Ozzy Osbourne impossible to reduce to lessons or warnings. From the very start, his career refused to obey the math. The behaviors pointed one way. The outcomes went another. This is the foundation of the WTF, not shock for shock's sake, but the persistent question that follows him through every era. How did this not end sooner? And more importantly, why didn't it? Alright, so if segment 1 was a standing at the edge of the cliff going, well surely this is where it ends. Segment 2 is where the universe looked at that cliff, laughed like it knew something we didn't, installed stadium seating, and started charging for parking, because this is the part of Ozzy Osbourne's story where the math doesn't just fail politely, it fails with attitude, it fails repeatedly, and then it turns around and fails again just to make sure you understand it's not participating, because the solo years were not supposed to be a glow-up, they were supposed to be the aftermath, the slow fade, the cautionary tale you tell younger artists while you tap a mic and say, test test. Don't do this, and instead what happened was Ozzy got bigger, louder, more visible, and somehow more permanent after being removed from the very band that built the foundation under him, which on paper should have stripped him of identity, infrastructure, and relevance all at once, because Black Sabbath wasn't just a band he was in, it was the frame around his voice, it was the context that made the whole thing make sense, and losing that should have been like pulling the engine out of the car and then acting surprised it won't start, because now there's no band brand to hide behind. No shared responsibility, no safety net, no, we're all in this together, just Ozzy, his name, his reputation, and a future that looked about as stable as a folding table on a gravel road, and we can pretend we're shocked, but the honest truth is most people would have bet against him right there, because being fired from your own genre-defining band is where a lot of careers go to die quietly, and yet instead of a careful rebuild or a let's get our fork together moment, what followed was volatility with momentum, chaos on a schedule, instability with tour dates, because the solo career didn't clean anything up. It amplified everything people were already worried about, and here's where the WTF deepens, because the success did not wait for reform, it did not require healing, it did not politely knock and ask if Ozzy was ready to behave now. It arrived right alongside the dysfunction like it brought its own suitcase and moved in, and I need you to feel the audacity of that, because we are told, by parents, teachers, bosses, and those little posters in waiting rooms, that discipline creates longevity. That stability is the price of endurance, that eventually behavior catches up with outcomes, and Ozzy's solo era looked at that lesson, squinted, and said, I don't think so, friend, because the contradiction became the pattern. Albums connected while instability continued unchecked, tours sold while the chaos escalated, and a whole new generation found their entry point into heavy music through a figure who seemed to be actively imploding in real time.
Testing. I don't know if y'all can hear me, but I've just had a really big crash. I'm trying to get it back up here. Please forgive me. Get my camera to work, guys. I'm sorry. I think I may have to shut this one down. I don't know why I'm having so many difficulties. I can't seem to get things to work. Aha! I must have done something right. So now you're going to have to just give me a second. I'm sorry, y'all. I have no clue what just happened, but at least it didn't shut me down. And if I can just grab that stuff right back, no problemo. Let me see what we got here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to give you the rest of it. This is messed up.
Beginning, Ozzy Osbourne existed
Alright,
in a
hold up.
space where outcomes
No further
multiplied,
along.
and people started treating disaster
I'll be right
like it
back.
was
Go and
just
fix
another
problem.
stop on the tour schedule, like, oh, that's just Tuesday. And if you've ever watched that from the outside, you know the feeling. It's not admiration, it's not condemnation, it's a kind of stunned fascination where you're not sure whether to clap, pray, or hide the sharp objects. And the weirdest part is the audience stayed, not out of blind loyalty, but because the persona became a magnet, because he wasn't presenting a cleaned-up image or a lesson neatly tied with a bow, he was presenting chaos honestly, whether intentionally or not, and that kind of honesty is dangerous because
Oh, gosh. Pardon me.
witnessing something real, even if what they're witnessing is a man dangling over consequences like a cartoon character who forgot gravity exists, and it's important to say this clearly. This is not praise for bad behavior. This isn't me handing out gold stars for self-destruction. This is me naming the weird cultural glitch where talent, timing, and resonance sometimes override collapse for a while, because Ozzy's story forces us to confront something we don't like to say out loud, which is that deserving isn't always the deciding factor. Sometimes the world picks what it wants and then dares reality to argue with it, and that's why this era feels like the math gets worse, because once he's solo, he's exposed, there's no buffer, no band democracy, no group accountability, and that should have made everything more fragile, not less, and yet the engine kept running, the persona grew larger, the mythology thickened, and the line between the man and the legend blurred until it became difficult to separate the two. And that blur is where the real madness lives, because now you're not just watching a person, you're watching a character that the culture helped build, and characters don't have to obey the same rules people do. Characters can fall and get back up and fall again and still be on the poster next week, and at some point Ozzy stopped being a guy with problems who makes music, and started being Ozzy Osbourne, this symbol that could absorb an unbelievable amount of damage without the story ending, and if you've ever sat with that too long, you know how unsettling it gets, because it's like watching a car with 3 flat tires still win the race, and you're not mad at the driver,
Oh, wow.
you're mad at the universe for allowing it.
Good to
You're like,
see you.
excuse
Been
me,
wondering
is this
about
a
you.
simulation? And that's the exact energy of this segment, because the solo years don't feel like a redemption arc, they feel like momentum without explanation, like forward motion that doesn't have permission but happens anyway, and the incidents, the meltdowns, the scares, the public mess, start to stack up in people's minds like a countdown, like, okay surely now, and then, okay surely now, and then, alright for real this time, and every time the book snaps back open like somebody said, nah, add another chapter, and here is where I want to put a flashlight on the audience, because the audience is part of the story whether anybody likes it or not, because the WTF isn't just that Ozzy survived, it's that the audience stayed with him through it, And not because they're monsters, but because fascination is powerful, because people are drawn to raw unpredictability, because it feels honest, and because heavy music, especially in the eras that shaped it, has always had this
Good to
weird
see you.
relationship with chaos where it can be both warning and fuel, and Ozzy embodied something audiences couldn't look away from, not a polished role model, not a tidy hero, but a live wire, and when you combine a live wire with cultural resonance you don't get stability, you get mythology, you get the legend growing in real time while the person inside it is still trying to survive, and that's what makes this period so baffling, because the damage didn't slow the machine, if anything it fed it, because the persona became bigger than the incidents, the mythology became thicker than the headlines, and the chaos itself became part of the brand in a way that is both fascinating and deeply uncomfortable, because the story starts to feel like it's running on its own momentum, like it doesn't even require the person to be okay, it just requires the symbol to keep showing up, and that's where the math gets worse, becomes more than a catchy phrase, because now we're not just asking, how did he survive? We're asking, why did the system keep rewarding survival without stability? And the honest answer is, we don't like the answer, because it suggests that outcomes don't always line up with behavior, that talent can coexist with collapse, that timing can override consequence, and that cultural appetite can keep a story moving even when the human inside it is wobbling. And that's why this segment has to be said with a little sarcasm and a little side-eye, because otherwise it becomes too heavy, and we're not doing heavy today, we're doing truth with a grin, because if you don't laugh you'll just stare at the ceiling and spiral. So yes, this is the era where you watch the warning signs light up like a dashboard and then the car still makes it across 3 states, and you're like, sir, your engine is smoking, and the story goes, it's fine, and somehow it is, for now, and that, for now, is the haunting part, because every time it works, it teaches the world and the person inside it that it can keep working, and the cycle continues, and that cycle, chaos, survival, success, becomes the pattern, and patterns become expectations, and expectations become mythology, and mythology becomes hard to stop, and this is why the question shifts in segment 2, because the first question was, how did it not end early, and the second question becomes, how did it get bigger after it should have collapsed, because that's not just improbable, that's offensive to logic, and yet there it is, and the deeper WTF is realizing that the contradiction isn't an exception, it's the engine, the contradiction becomes the brand, the contradiction becomes the thing that people talk about, argue about, mythologize, and keep coming back to, because it refuses to resolve, and that refusal to resolve is part of the fascination, because humans love a story that won't sit still. We love to watch the impossible and then argue about why it happened, and Ozzy's solo era gave people endless material for that, not because it was clean, but because it was raw, and raw can be durable in a way polished can't, because polished cracks when it gets hit. Raw just keeps being raw, and Ozzy's durability in this era feels like that, like duct tape holding together something that by rights should have fallen apart, which is why the math isn't just wrong once, it's wrong repeatedly. Every marker that should have signaled an ending marked continuation instead, every this is it became, and then, and at this point in the story it's no longer surprising that Ozzy made it through early chaos. What's surprising is that the chaos seemed incapable of finishing the job, which is where shock turns into disbelief, disbelief turns into fascination, and fascination turns into that far more unsettling question that sits under this whole era like a bass note you can't ignore. If the usual rules don't apply here, if the warning signs don't stop the story, if collapse and influence can coexist like this, then what, if anything, actually stops it?
Sage, you're here. I'm so happy. Thank you for being here. Yeah, Randy Rhoads, Jimmy Page, and Eddie Van Halen, also my favorite guitarists. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have to put Eddie a little bit further towards the front. So, okay, listen, we love to act like music careers come with a neat little flow chart. Okay. You grind, you rise, you peak, you decline, you ride off into the sunset, and everybody behaves. We're going to go on with the second half of this, but I just wanted to put this out there too before I take my little break because my voice is trying to kill me again. And I would love that. I would love for us, just to have them behave. I really would. But every once in a while, a story shows up that looks at the whole plan like it's optional. and then uses it to start a fire. I think that's true for any genre in the music sense. But, that letter today, it's not asking why did he do all that? Because, darling, if poor choices ended careers, the rock genre would be 3 songs and a banjo solo. Full stop. This letter's asking the real rude question. You ask me, my opinion. But how does the story keep going after it already passed every stopping point that normally shuts people down? Fired from his own band, chaos on top of chaos, health scares, reinventions that had no business working, but they worked anyway. Ozzy could sing opera and people would love it. Let me just say that, okay? It's honestly the most disrespectful part, I think, but everybody's asking that question, aren't they? Deep down in your head, you don't want to say it out loud. I'm not here to moralize it, okay? Because this ain't Sunday school. And I didn't bring snacks, but I'm here to look at it the way we actually experience it, which is, excuse me, universe, are you just freestyling consequences now? Because that's what it feels like. Like the laws got tired and just called in sick, or this earns what the fork. We can't start at the legend. We can't start at the victory lap. And we definitely can't start after everybody decided it was inspirational. We've got to go back, all the way back to the beginning, back when nobody would have bet a cold biscuit on this story. Back before the myth hardened, okay? Before survival started looking like a superpower. And it was, it was, because that's where what the fork starts. And that's where Ozzy starts. Neat, timeless stories that sometimes behave themselves, but not really. This is where the math doesn't math. The rule book gets used as a coaster, and we all collectively share at a story and go. Now, wait just one damn minute. I'm erasing my voice back in, easing my voice back in. I can't even talk. So I'm being smart about how I use it, but don't let that fool you, okay? Because the energy in here is still turned up all the way. I may pace myself, but the story sure won't, and neither will the questions we're about to ask. Wednesdays around here aren't about lessons. They're not about fixing anybody, and they're definitely not about pretending the mess didn't happen. Wednesdays are about survival, about the people whose stories should have ended early. I mean, come on, y'all. We never expected Ozzy to last as long as he did. Thankful that he did, right? You got to think about that kind of stuff. Careers that should have wrapped up, long time ago. Done. It should be done. You can tune the fish, but you can't tune the banjo. You better believe it. And don't do them around me. Nice one, Sage. That's the humor I love. All right, I'm going to take me a little break, get me a little bit more honey tea for my throat, because we're still dealing with allergies. You can tell because my voice is a little deeper today. So here's this really, screw it, I'm just going to say this. There's this really kick-ass song fixing to play for you that I wrote the lyrics. Yes, I use Suno for the music, but that's because I am not musically inclined with an instrument other than my voice. But no, it's not me singing either. I don't have the huevos for that one yet, okay? I'll get there, I promise, but I don't have that. So you get to listen to you get to listen to AI voices sing this, okay? But enjoy it.
She came from the quiet storm, built a fire from the ground, turned a whisper to a warning. Now her voice shakes the town. Every setback was a lesson. Every doubt became a key, unlocking something bigger. That's the rise of Boss B. When the lights go low, her vision hits high. She built a whole damn network off a promise and a try. Every sunrise, every moment, she's stacking legacy. This ain't just a channel, this is BBTV. Boss B rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dreams, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss B rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. She's the queen of the comeback, the storm in the stream, crafting stories out of heartbeats, making visions out of dreams. Got thunder in the hustle, got a voice that cuts clean. Every mic she touches turns the power unseen. So let brothers spin the numbers, let the views rise slow or fast. Boss B doesn't measure wins by echoes of the past. This moment is a pivot, this season's history. Bow down to the founder of the BBTV dynasty. Boss B rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dreams, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss B rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. She's got fire in the head, it's got truth in the frame. Got a heart that won't retire and a gift you can't name. Every loop, every letter, every dream she sets free. It's a love note to the world sign. Boss B, and the world keeps watching as the numbers climb. But she's counting all the moments, not the dollar signs. From the late night grind to the daylight scene, she's building something bigger than the algorithm's dream. Boss B rising, BBTV shining. Her story's rewriting, a legacy in real time. Boss B rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dreams, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss B rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. BBTV, where the stories breathe. BBTV, where the dreamers believe. Boss B rising, watch her take her place. This is BBTV, this is her grace.
Join Boss B for Ask a Bee Monday through Friday, 12 noon Central Standard Time and Jukebox Journey every Saturday, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Roll on. I want to take a second to shout out Tuber Chat, because once again they showed up and held space the way real community does. This channel isn't about noise or numbers chasing, it's about consistency, respect, and actually supporting creators without strings attached. That matters more than people realize. If you're looking for a place that lifts voices instead of talking over them, Tuber Chat is that lane. I appreciate the time, the encouragement, and the steady presence more than I can properly wrap into words. So much love to the Tuber Chat crew for doing what you do and doing it the right way.
The chaos doesn't shock anymore, it just flat out refuses to end, and that's where Ozzy Osbourne's story stops behaving like a story and starts acting like a malfunction that nobody can shut down. because this was supposed to be over.
Thank you, Sage.
Medically, statistically, biologically, narratively. Over. Roll credits, cut the lights, and yet here we are watching the thing continue to move forward anyway. Not preserved, not polished, not reborn, not wrapped in inspirational cello music, but dragging itself ahead like a machine that missed the memo that it was scheduled for shutdown, because time didn't reset and the body absolutely kept score and eventually cashed the check in surgeries and injuries and neurological damage and visible physical limits that were not subtle, not poetic, not metaphorical, just blunt, physical, undeniable constraints that end entire careers quietly and permanently for people with half the mileage and a fraction of the damage, which is exactly why this phase shouldn't exist at all, because this is where the WTF stops being about youthful excess and starts being about how the hell forward motion is still occurring when every condition required for stopping has already been met, exceeded, stamped, notarized, and filed, because the stage does not forgive age on a good day and it definitely does not accommodate decades of punishment, and yet there he is, altered, slowed, visibly limited, and still unmistakably present, not pretending nothing changed but also not exiting the frame the way logic insists he should, which is where disbelief stops being passive and starts getting mouthy, because adaptation wasn't surrender and limitation wasn't disappearance and somehow the connection never evaporated even as the spectacle thinned out, which makes no sense if you believe the tidy myth that relevance requires dominance or stamina or control, because what showed up instead was persistence without polish, endurance without explanation, survival without apology, and that is profoundly annoying to anyone trying to impose order on this thing, because survival is supposed to be either triumphant or tragic, inspirational or cautionary, something you can package, summarize, and file away, not ongoing, not unresolved, not stubbornly unfinished, and yet that's exactly what this stretch looks like. No reinvention, no redemption arc, no grand narrative pivot, no sudden transformation into discipline or restraint or wisdom, no clean moral upgrade to make everyone more comfortable, just the same complicated, unpredictable human continuing to exist in public long after the math already failed, long after shock gave way to disbelief and outrage gave way to concern and the audience quietly stopped asking, "What will he do next?" and started asking, "How is this still happening?" Because every appearance feels borrowed and every release feels like it slipped through a crack in reality that should have closed years ago, and still they keep arriving. Without explanation, without justification, without asking permission from probability, which is infuriating if you're the kind of person who needs stories to behave, because this isn't a story that resolves, it's a story that refuses to conclude, and the chaos doesn't vanish but it also doesn't get to run the whole show anymore, it just stops being the headline while survival takes over the lead role by default, not as a statement or a triumph or a victory lap, but as an ongoing inconvenience to expectation, because nothing here obeys narrative rules. There is no final act pacing, no graceful decline, no neat passing of the torch, no satisfying closure, and the more you wait for it to settle into something understandable, the more it just keeps moving forward anyway, dragging disbelief along with it, forcing the realization that WTF doesn't always mean shock or scandal or spectacle. Sometimes it means endurance that breaks probability and ignores precedent and keeps going without permission. Sometimes it means watching someone outlast the conditions designed to erase them without ever stopping to explain how or why, and that's the part people get wrong when they try to soften this phase into reflection or legacy or inspiration, because there's nothing calm or resolved about it, it's not reflective, it's confrontational by its very existence, it keeps asking the same rude question over and over. Why hasn't this stopped yet? And never waits for an answer, because the body is compromised but present, the voice is altered but recognizable, the figure is diminished but unmistakable, and the continuation itself becomes the provocation, because this shouldn't be sustainable and yet it is, or at least it keeps pretending to be, which is different but somehow still works, and the audience feels it even if they can't articulate it, because this isn't nostalgia or reverence or tribute energy, it's straight-up disbelief stretched across time, the uncomfortable sensation of watching something persist that by all rational measures should have collapsed, and that persistence doesn't come with a speech or a bow or a lesson, it just keeps happening, which is why attempts to frame it as legacy feel premature and attempts to frame it as decline feel inaccurate, because decline implies direction and this thing refuses direction, it just continues, unevenly, imperfectly, stubbornly, like momentum itself has become the point, and by this stage the math isn't just broken, it's irrelevant, logic has been escorted out of the building, narrative theory is crying in the parking lot, and the only reason the story is still unfolding is because it hasn't stopped yet, which leaves the WTF hanging there unresolved and increasingly uncomfortable, because when survival itself becomes the headline and refuses to sit still long enough to be understood, you're left staring at a legacy that isn't clean or inspirational or tragic or triumphant, but active, ongoing, and deeply inconvenient to explanation, and that, right there, is why this still shouldn't be possible. At some point survival stops being something you notice and starts being something that just sits there permanently, like background noise you can't mute, and that's where Ozzy Osbourne's story stops confusing people in short bursts and starts confusing them as a standing condition, because by this stage the chaos isn't surprising and the excess isn't shocking
Thank
and
you,
even the
Sage.
consequences aren't the headline
I'm
anymore.
so happy you're okay.
The genuinely baffling part is that the story itself never ended, never wrapped, never politely concluded, never gave anyone the satisfaction of a final chapter that explains what it all meant, because that's how most careers behave whether they want to or not. They burn out, fade away, implode, or at least limp toward a tidy ending that lets historians draw arrows and critics write closure-heavy think pieces. And Ozzy's career simply refused to cooperate with that process. It never collapsed cleanly and it never resolved. It just kept stacking, era on top of era, mess on top of mess, mythology on top of reality, without replacing anything that came before it, without canceling anything out, without editing itself down for clarity, just piling higher until the accumulation itself became the point, because the early chaos didn't disappear when the solo explosion hit and the solo explosion didn't erase the public meltdowns and the meltdowns didn't invalidate the health battles and the health battles didn't cancel the comebacks that weren't supposed to work. None of it went away, it all stayed active at the same time, like every version of the story refused to leave the room, which is wildly inconvenient if you're trying to explain legacy in a way that behaves, because this wasn't a clean influence you can diagram or a moment you can isolate or a genre shift you can footnote. This was infiltration, absorption, Ozzy becoming part of the structure itself instead of a chapter in the book, referenced across generations not as a template to imitate but as a constant presence that proved music culture could absorb contradiction without collapsing, because he represented danger and vulnerability at the same time, chaos and familiarity at the same time, unpredictability and permanence in the same breath, which should not stabilize, should not normalize, should not last, and yet here it is, still embedded, still active, still impossible to separate from the sound, the culture, and the expectations surrounding heavy music. And what makes this even more irritating to logic is that none of it was carefully curated. There was no long-term image management plan, no strategic narrative cleanup, no late career sanitization designed to make the past easier to swallow. The story stayed messy and incomplete and unresolved, and instead of weakening the impact it made it stronger, because authenticity, whether intentional or accidental, hit harder than polish ever could, and that's where WTF stops being a question and starts being a condition. Because explanation stops working here, there is no lesson to extract, no formula to replicate, no moral to underline, just the blunt demonstration that cultural impact does not obey morality or logic or probability. Sometimes it just persists long enough to become permanent, and over time the shock wore off even though the presence didn't, because audiences stopped waiting for the implosion and started marveling that there was still a next at all, which is a bizarre psychological shift when you think about it, because the WTF didn't disappear, it calcified, it hardened into acceptance not because it suddenly made sense but because it became familiar, and that familiarity is unsettling in its own way, because the very things that should have ended the story are now inseparable from it. The chaos didn't erase the music, the instability didn't dissolve the influence, the consequences didn't conclude the narrative, they fused into it, became structural instead of terminal, and that's why attempts to frame Ozzy as a cautionary tale always fall flat and attempts to frame him as a redemption arc feel dishonest, because neither of those shapes actually fits. What exists instead is a permanent outlier that refuses classification, a legacy that isn't clean or inspirational or tragic or triumphant but ongoing, unresolved, and deeply inconvenient to explanation, because permanence wasn't achieved through control or discipline or reinvention, it happened by accident, through endurance, through refusal, through the sheer inability of the story to stop when it was supposed to, which is why WTF Wednesday exists for moments like this where analysis stops being helpful and disbelief becomes the only honest reaction, because the legacy here isn't about what he represented or what he taught or what he symbolized, it's about the fact that he stayed, that the presence outlasted the predictions, the damage, the expectations, the timelines, and the explanations, and that endurance slowly rewired perception itself, because at first the question was, how did this happen? Then it became, how is this still happening? And eventually it turned into, well, of course it's still happening, which is a terrifying sentence if you actually stop to think about it, because that's how permanence sneaks in, not with ceremony but with repetition, not with clarity but with persistence, and by the time people realized the WTF had become permanent it was already too late to resolve it, because the chaos had stopped being disqualifying and the instability had stopped being disqualifying and the consequences had stopped being final. They were just part of the fabric now, woven in so tightly that removing them would unravel the whole thing. And that's how Ozzy didn't become a lesson or a warning or a neat symbol of anything digestible. He became a category that doesn't need comparison, a fixture that doesn't require approval, a reminder that some stories are not meant to resolve, redeem, or conclude. They are meant to endure in a state of unresolved motion. And the most honest WTF isn't that it happened or that it survived or even that it lasted this long, it's that it became normal without ever becoming logical, and it just keeps going anyway.
Be nice to me. All right, this is where we put a pin in this, okay? Not because it's resolved, not because it suddenly makes sense, but because we've followed it far enough to admit the obvious. Today was never about answers. It was about recognizing that some stories refuse to land. They don't wrap, they don't clarify, they really don't reward analysis with closure. They just keep existing, long past the point where existence itself starts feeling suspicious. When you look at a life like Ozzy Osbourne's, the reflex it's always the same. We want to explain it, justify it, categorize it, turn it into something useful, something teachable, something that behaves. That's what we're taught all of our life. I mean, let's face it, this is programming. And you know what they call grooming, that's a different form of programming. And there's all kinds of different programmings, you know? Oh, amen, Sage. You are so right about that. Look, I'm going to put that up there because that right there is exactly what I'm trying to say here. Ozzy is in a very special place in heaven with the greats, but he's not allowed to bite the heads off the doves. Amen. I love that. That was awesome. But look, we want it to become a lesson or a warning or a redemption, right? A redemption arc of sorts. We can underline and move on from it. Okay. But that urge breaks down really fast because not everything earns a moral. And not every career follows rules that were designed for people who stop when they're supposed to. Some legacies, they don't add up cleanly. And some lives refuse to cooperate with the endings we keep drafting for them. The only one that can control this, I think, and we all can believe, is God and your own free will, who can control you, an individual person. God gave you free will. You're the only one in control. But even with all the chaos and all the physical, mental, and emotional abuse that not only did others put on him, but he also put on himself, he outlasted all of that. He outlasted every version of the conclusion we were confident he would arrive eventually. That's not inspiration, okay? That's disruption. That's the core of what the forked story, not shock value, not chaos for chaos. Definitely not for chaos' sake. Not nostalgia, cosplay either, but the blunt recognition that the math never worked and the story kept going anyway. I guess that's what makes it uncomfortable. That's what makes it linger. Because once you see that the rules don't apply evenly, you can't unsee it. Once you accept that survival itself can become permanent without permission, the whole idea of how stories are supposed to end starts looking a little flimsy. You know, if today left you shaking your head just a bit, good. That's That reaction is honest. That friction is the point. What the Fork Wednesdays aren't here to clean things up or make anyone feel settled. Not by any means. They're not here to soothe or to summarize or spoon feed meaning. They're here to sit inside the contradiction and admit when disbelief is the only response that isn't pretending. Because sometimes the most truthful thing that you can say about a story is, I don't know why this still exists, but it does. You have to agree to disagree on that one, right? And who are we agreeing to disagree with? Mother Nature, honey, because God's got a plan. And there's power in saying that out loud without rushing to fix it. Listen, I appreciate y'all. Before I lose my voice again, I am going to start the little wrap up here. Sage, I am so happy to see you. I know you're busy, but like I said before, it's always such a pleasure when you show up because I know you're okay. It's like I used to tell my kids, I can't know that you're okay until I see your face. And there you are, honey. There you are. I love you, man. So I paced this one and I tried. We got up to 52 minutes. I'm doing okay. For those of you that don't know, I was sick, or I'm still kind of sick, but I don't know if it's the flu stuff or what. It's crazy. I lost my voice for almost a full week, which, let me tell you, my house was happy. Not going to sugarcoat that. But letting my voice breathe and letting the weight stay here where it landed instead of just forcing it into something tidy, that kind of patience matters more than you probably realize. And I want to thank you for that. This space works because you let the story do the heavy lifting instead of demanding it explain itself in your letters. And that's rare. So tomorrow we're going to switch lenses again. Thankful Thursday. I would love that, Sage. I would absolutely love that. Absolutely. In fact, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'll give you my email right now. Okay? I'm going to give you my email right now. And you can just send me an email and I will send you my phone number as soon as I can figure out what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm crazy. I can't help it. Okay, I know what I'm doing now. It's the medicine that I have to take for my allergies. It's kicking my butt today. It kicked me way worse yesterday, though. Yesterday, I was an airhead from the moment I stepped out of bed. Let's see here. Almost there. I'm just trying to get over here. Do. Here I am. Here I am. Sorry, I do this from my studio in the StreamYard, so I'm going over here. So I'm going to put this up for you, my friend, because you're the bestest, and I'm so happy to hear you're okay and get to talk to you again. Oh, where's that email address now? Yeah, it's okay. I'm so glad that I've gotten this far with this today because I wasn't thinking I was going to. Oh my goodness. You know what? I know where it's at now. That's so silly. Yay. Let me see. Well, I'm going to push this one up. Yep. BBTV Productions 1 at Gmail. Okay. I'm going to put that in here. BBTV Productions. If I can spell. 1. Because I am number 1. Let's just put it right there where it belongs. Just kidding. Oh, GL. That's cute. GL.com. Check out your channel. You know what? Y'all all go check out that channel. And Sage, we can fix that, honey. We can fix that for sure. Most definitely. There's that email address. Get it to me. We're going to talk. I'm going to help you out. We need to get you rolling because You know what? You got the music, and I got the music, and we got the music in us. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, guys. I'm sorry. I don't want to overdo it before the show tonight. We do have a show tonight, Ladies Diary, at 6 Central, 7 Eastern. And we will definitely and hopefully get to see you all then. Tomorrow, like I said, we're going to switch some lenses again. Same kind of music, or same in music, different reason for talking about it, different angle, different pressure, different kind of truth. I mean, it's going to be Thankful Thursday, right? For now, sit with the fork, let it stay unresolved. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time. And thank you so much for being here. I'm going to get VB up here, and then I'm going to close us out. Yeah, everything kind of fell out, so I have to go find her crazy little butt. All right, here we go.
You're enjoying this show. Subscribing
you,
is the
Paige.
easiest way to support what's being built here on BBTV. You'll see the join button right next to subscribe. No pressure, no expectations, just an option for people who want to support the channel in a real way. We're live weekdays at 12 p.m. Central, and each day has its own focus. Same honesty, same voice, just different conversations depending on the day. And if you've got a story you want to share, send it in. Anonymous is always fine.
Amen. Amen to that. All right, you guys. I love you bunches. Love you, Sage. I'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys. Tomorrow.